people consider when they think about Malcolm X was that he was a violent guy, and he wasn't a violent guy. The misconceptions with Malcolm X are vast, because he was really scary to white people. And we sort of talk about him after we talk about King, but Malcolm X was doing this stuff up at the same time King was doing his stuff. That is to say, Malcolm died in 1965. Malcolm didn't, take over after King, after the Voting Rights Act. There was a nonviolent part of the Civil Rights Act, and it wasn't violent so much; it was mad, right? It was a separationist viewpoint. Remember when he talks about Marcus Garvey in the 1920s, the Back to Africa movement? Yeah. Well, how many of you read Malcolm X? Right? What is the relationship between Garvey and Malcolm X?
Malcolm X's dad was basically like Garvey's.
Yeah, Malcolm X's father sort of was one of his followers of what he believed in, right? Malcolm X believed that we should have separate races. That whites should be over here, blacks should be over here, but for different reasons than what whites thought. Right? Whites were thinking, okay, well, segregation is good because we don't like black people. And they're not as good as us. And we give them a bunch of crap. Malcolm, and this was his argument, and if you want to watch a great movie, you should watch Malcolm X. It's made by Spike Lee. Denzel Washington is in it. I'm going to show you a scene from it. I'm going to show you a scene, like actually Malcolm X speaking, giving a speech. And then I'll also show you a scene from the end of Malcolm X where he's assassinated. Denzel Washington is amazing, and Spike Lee hardly got any money to make this. Major motion picture studios didn't want to give him any money to do this. This was in the early 90s, and he actually got money from Oprah and Michael Jordan to help make this movie, which is also a testament. I mean, this is a big blockbuster. I mean, this is a movie with Angela Bassett and Denzel Washington. The studios didn't want to do, right? So it's not like, racism has gone from even Hollywood. People think about it in ultra-liberal places.
Well, I think it's also that it was Malcolm, and not, I feel like if it was Martin Luther, it probably wouldn't have been as big of a deal, but as you said, there's lots of, misconceptions.
Yeah, and here's the thing, what Malcolm said. We don't want to be around white people. Why would we want to be around people who don't want to be near us? All King is trying to do is integrate with people who don't want him there in the first place. If you don't want me there, I don't want to be there. What have white people done to us? They have taken us from our homeland. They've enslaved us. They've raped our women. They've put us in ghettos. They've thrown alcohol and drugs into our culture. They continue to rape our women. They call us names. They think we're inferior. And now we're supposed to want to integrate with them? Why on earth is that logical? Do you see his logic?
Yeah.
Why do we want to integrate with people who hate us? This is not our home. This is not where we're from. This is not our home. This is not where we're from. His great line was, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Enslaved us. And he called people to be proud of who they were. To be excited in the fact that they are different, right? That you have different hair. That you look different. Don't be ashamed of it. When he was a younger guy, he used to conk his hair. You know what that means? We're talking about in the book. Straighten to make it look like a white person's. It was painful for him. Burned his head at one point. He stopped doing that. Why would you want to? His name was Malcolm Little, right? He changed the X stands for the unknown because he didn't know his real name. Who was Little? Where did most black people's last names come from? Yeah, it's former slave owners, right? So why do I want to be named after a person who brutally suppressed my family and kept them in the bonds of slavery? And what he did was, he went to jail, right? He was in jail. What did he go to jail for? You remember?
Possession of a gun or something like that?
He got... he was arrested for breaking and entering, right? He was a thief. And he was in Harlem and he was doing some pretty bad things. And he got arrested. He went to jail. And while he was in jail, he became a member of the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam is a black nationalist group headed by a guy named Elijah Muhammad. Remember him?
Yeah.
And Elijah Muhammad put Malcolm in charge of spreading the word of the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam was very strict. You look nice all the time. You represent yourself really well. You never smoke. You don't do drugs. No alcohol. Very strict with religion. And for a lot of African Americans who were living in dire situations, this gave them pride, right? It made them feel like they were a good person. That it was okay to be black and to like to be black and hold on to your heritage. Instead of reading about white people in history books, let's read about our people in history books. Where's our history? And this was resonant, especially in inner city, in inner cities. And he started off in Harlem, right? And he started churches and temples all over the place. But he started off in Harlem. He's eventually going to break with Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad, as it turned out, ended up having affairs with a bunch of people and had a bunch of kids. And Malcolm left. Malcolm was assassinated in 1965. Who assassinated him? Yeah, supposedly it was the Nation of Islam. It was, and when he was killed, it wasn't like MLK or JFK where he was shot really far away. He was giving a speech in Harlem. Some guys stood up, went up to the stage, a bunch of them, and filled him with bullets in front of tons of people, and then ran away. So he died, and he always figured he would be assassinated. Near the end of his life, he ended up going. Where did he end up going near the end of his life?
Mecca.
He ended up going to Mecca, right? He ended up doing the Hajj, right? That Muslims were supposed to do. And when he did this, he was on the Hajj with Arabs and some whites and Indians. And what happened?
It changed his perspective.
Yeah, it changed his perspective on the issue of racism, and it became less about whites being the devil and more about the problem was like the American society that perpetuated racism. And when he died, he was a bit different. But what he said about nonviolence is he didn't advocate violence. He just said, we're going to not be nonviolent. If we go somewhere, if King's people go somewhere and they get beat on the head, what do?
Nothing.
They pray for it, right? They sit there and pray for it and they don't do anything. If you hit me on the head, I'm taking you out. How many people beat up Malcolm's people? Not so many, right? His point was, if you want to have pride in who you are, you can't let the people that hate you push you around. Now, this is obviously a different sort of path to economic or civil rights, right? But it also resonated in people who were getting really pissed off because his laws were all changing, but their lives weren't any different, right? And this is going to start the Black Power movement. You see a bunch of athletes start changing their names, getting popular, taking on sort of black pride stuff. Where do you see this? What are some examples?
Muhammad Ali.
Do what? Muhammad Ali is a big example. He was the most famous person in the world, right? And where's he from, by the way? From Louisville, right? And he changed his name. Who else? Lou Alcindor changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. In the 1968, I'll show you this in a second, the 1968 Summer Olympics, 2 of the 3 guys on the 200-meter dash held up the Black Power symbol during the national anthem, like with their black gloves on, right? It really pissed people off. You also see it on average things like people wearing an afro. An afro is something that white people can't get. Miles's hair is not necessarily an afro, though, is it? It's just long hair, right, that has to be curly. What is the difference between Miles's hair and an afro? You don't pick yours out, right? So what can it look like if it's not picked out?
It looks like
a dog.
yeah.
Or it's longer, right?
Yeah, it's long and curly though. It's not
Yeah. Do what? White people can't grow afros. Now that hair is Afro-esque. But the difference is that you can have hair that's like you guys know what LeBron James looks like, right? He's got like, his hair is short. He could pick his hair out and it would kind of go up like this. Yeah, it's just different. And the point is that African Americans were celebrating the fact that they could, this is what they got, right? This is who they are. And people wore big afros. Dr. J had a gigantic afro when he played. There were a bunch of, Artist Gilmore had a gigantic afro when he played. Angela Davis, this chick had a gigantic afro.
Her hair was kind of awesome.
Yeah. This is a celebration of who you are. The Black Panther, SNCC ends up becoming mostly black. They start moving white people out of SNCC. Remember SNCC, the voting thing was about sort of a white and black organization. That stops and it becomes mostly black. And it was led by a guy named Stokely Carmichael, who had also ties to the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was sort of a revolutionary party inside. You know where it started? What part of the country it started from? It started in Oakland. And the Black Panther Party is about sort of an urban revolutionary group. They didn't go looking to kill white people. Everyone was like, the Black Panther Party or like the Black KKK. That's not true. They didn't go out lynching people. What they were talking about was protecting their neighborhood, oftentimes from cops. In many urban areas, cops are seen as the enemy. Sometimes probably rightfully and sometimes probably wrong, right?
It doesn't take very much to be a lot of places.
Well, and there, especially in places like LA, there is a gigantic history of racial discrimination and corruption of the police force. In fact, one reason why O.J. Simpson didn't go to jail is because the person who was going after him, the lead investigator, was wildly racist. Had said a bunch of racist stuff, and then he planted evidence. And now, by the way, if you're curious, he is a legal advisor for Fox News. But sometimes they cart him out when they want to. There's Mark Furman. But race has been a problem, right? And obviously, we're going to get to the Rodney King beating in 1991. You guys know what I'm talking about, the Rodney King beating? I'll show you that video of these white cops just beating the snot out of this guy over and over when he was clearly trying to not want to go anywhere. And somebody taped it. And it was taped, and then there was a trial to get these cops fired, and they lost. And the cops didn't get fired, and they got their money. And it started a race riot in LA. It was scary. It was not. I remember being really like, oh my God, I've never seen a race riot before. This is ridiculous.
I feel like LA was race riots all the time.
LA had a lot of race riots. In fact, we're going to talk about racial violence now and the long hot summers. I know I'm going fast, but I want to get to some of the videos.